The content in this video is based on factual, real-life events and public records. All opinions expressed are for educational and documentary purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised, as some scenes may depict sensitive content. This video is intended for informative purposes and complies with YouTube's guidelines. The world you are never meant to see. A world exists inside Japan. A world with its own rules, its own silence, its own version of control. Behind these walls, you're only allowed to speak after asking permission. From a guard some inmates call the god. One wrong move, you could spend an entire day not moving a single muscle. This isn't a movie. This isn't a myth. This is Osaka Prison, one of the toughest, strictest, and most disciplined prisons on Earth. And for the 1,100 inmates who live here, survival is not about strength. It's about obedience, silence, stillness, endurance. Today we step inside this hidden world, and nothing here is what you expect. If you enjoy real, gripping prison documentaries and true stories, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends and family. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking and exclusive content. Osaka Prison doesn't feel like part of the outside world. It operates on a rhythm that's rigid, silent, and almost ritualistic. Every movement has a rule. Every rule has a consequence. From the moment the gates close, inmates step into a system where speaking without permission is punished, where eye contact can be considered defiance, and where the guard's commands are followed with machine-like precision. Japan calls it discipline. Many critics call it psychological pressure. But inside these walls, there is no debate, only compliance. Osaka Prison isn't chaotic. It doesn't rely on force. It relies on structure so strict that it becomes its own kind of shock. A world where silence keeps the order, and order keeps everything from breaking. Japan's justice system is unforgiving. With a conviction rate over 99%, most people who enter the system never walk out innocent. Even smaller offenses, petty theft, minor assaults, financial crimes, can land someone in a facility built for strict discipline rather than rehabilitation. The country's philosophy is simple. Wrongdoing is corrected through routine, order, and hard structure. The law doesn't bend for personal circumstances. It doesn't negotiate. It's built on the belief that social harmony matters more than individual intention. Critics call the system harsh. Supporters call it effective. But one thing is clear. Once you're inside Osaka Prison, the punishment isn't just the sentence. It's the everyday environment designed to grind down resistance and replace it with obedience. The day begins before sunrise. Inmates rise immediately when ordered. No hesitation, no conversation. Morning roll call is conducted with precision, each prisoner standing in a designated spot, staring straight ahead. Guards march the hallways in practice formation. Their training emphasizes nonviolence through control, not confrontation. The prison enforces a zero-weapon policy so strict that even maintenance tools are handled under multi-layer supervision. Every routine, head count, meals, movement from cell to corridor happens on cue. The prisoners march in single file, hands at their sides, eyes down. The system leaves no space for independent expression. That's the point. Cell Block 6 is one of the strictest wings. A single cell measures roughly 6 square meters. A compact box holding a futon, a toilet, and almost nothing else. Much of the day is spent seated on the floor in a fixed position. Hands on knees, back straight. No shifting, no stretching. Prisoners describe the silence as heavy, almost unnatural. A guard can issue punishment for something as small as looking out the window or adjusting posture without permission. Solitary confinement is the ultimate pressure point. Minimal light, no talking, and total isolation. Life here is built on stillness. Enforced stillness that tests endurance more than strength. Hiroto has been here long enough that the wood factory feels normal to him. Every day he reports to the workshop, sits at his station, and builds wooden furniture in complete silence. The rules are absolute. No talking, no unnecessary movement. Every tool, even a small chisel, is treated as a potential weapon and cataloged with strict checks. The work is repetitive, but the objective isn't creativity or craftsmanship. It's adherence. Deviations are punished. Compliance is rewarded. To some inmates, the factory gives purpose. To others, it's another layer of psychological conditioning, discipline disguised as labor. Ko and Taro are nearing release. They've spent years inside a world run by commands. Stepping into the halfway house is their first taste of breathing room. But freedom isn't comforting. It's overwhelming. Everyday tasks feel foreign. Choosing food, speaking freely, walking without permission. The staff call it culture shock, but for these men, it's fear. Fear of messing up. Fear of not fitting into a world that moved on without them. Here, they practice simple things, budgeting, navigating public transport, talking to strangers. Skills that most people never think twice about. For them, it's a first step back into humanity. As release approaches, inmates take part in a small ceremony, a graduation of sorts. It's formal, quiet, symbolic. A reminder that they're leaving one controlled world for another uncertain one. Their last night is tense. Excitement mixes with dread. The next morning, they march one final time, hearing the commands they've lived under for years. Then the doors open. Some step out with hope, others with confusion. All of them carry the weight of a system built to change behavior through absolute order. Hiroto returns to his routine, the cell, the silence, the workshop. He's one of many serving sentences so long that the outside world has become abstract. For lifers, this system becomes their universe. They live by its codes, its structure, its discipline. They reflect on guilt, on past mistakes, on the rigid order that now defines their days. Japan's prisons rarely see riots or uprisings. Not because inmates are content, but because the discipline is so complete that rebellion feels impossible. This is the part of Osaka Prison the world rarely sees. Not the harshness, but the quiet, controlled permanence that keeps some men here until the end of their lives. There is a world in the center of Osaka that almost no one will ever see. A world that runs on silence, discipline, and consequences. It looks like a prison from the outside. High concrete walls, guard towers, steel gates, but once you cross the threshold, the atmosphere shifts into something colder, sharper, and far more controlled than any ordinary jail. Osaka Prison is not simply a containment facility. It is a system, a machine, a place where every minute is accounted for, every movement monitored, every mistake punished. If freedom is defined by choices, then this place is the opposite of freedom. It is a life stripped down to command and obedience. The rules here are not suggestions. They are the air the inmates breathe, the walls they sleep beside, the lines they walk on the ground, the silence that becomes a second skin. Talking isn't forbidden by preference, it's forbidden by design. A prisoner here must ask permission to speak at all, and that permission is rarely granted. For the newly arrived, the shock is instant. They come in expecting harshness, but what they find feels closer to another culture, another dimension, one where human behavior is rewritten from scratch. The guards do not carry weapons, not even a baton, not even handcuffs on their belts. Their authority comes entirely from structure, ritual, and relentless repetition. Roll call. Stand at attention. Face forward. No eye contact. Move only when ordered. Speak only when allowed. Every command hits like a hammer. Every deviation is met with consequences sharp enough to slice the day in half. For the 1,100 men inside, this is normal. The Japanese justice system is unforgiving, precise, and mathematically severe. Minor offenses carry penalties that, in other countries, would seem disproportionate. A theft that might earn probation elsewhere can lead to years behind bars here. A fight in a nightclub can spiral into multi-year sentences. A moment of reckless anger can end in decades of isolation. And murder? Murder has only two outcomes: life imprisonment or death. Inside Osaka Prison, more than 30 men will never leave. They are lifers, permanent residents of a 6-square-meter cell where time no longer moves the way it does outside. Their world is the length of their futon, the width of their table, The narrow strip of window they are forbidden to stand in front of. The daily cycle begins at 6 a.m., but the atmosphere of wakefulness is constant. Even in sleep, there are rules. Heads must face the door at all times, so guards can read their faces through the small inspection window. Every expression is visible. Every flicker of emotion becomes part of the record. At 7 a.m., the outside world considers it morning. Inside Osaka Prison, it is formation time. 60 guards gather, standing rigid in the cold morning air. Their uniforms are immaculate, their expressions neutral. Roll call is as ceremonial as it is functional, an echo of military past, carried into a modern institution that still relies on the strictest form of order. Stand at attention. Salute. At ease. The report is delivered. Number of inmates, number of incidents, number of disciplinary cases. Most days, nothing notable has happened. That's the system working exactly as intended. A place with no weapons, no riots, and no tolerance for disorder leaves very little room for surprises. And then the real movement begins. Guards step into the cell blocks, 7 concrete units stacked with floors, all running on a rhythm that never changes. In cell block 6, the strictest of them all, the air is tighter, more compressed. Every prisoner here is in solitary confinement. Murderers, rapists, robbers, extortionists, repeat offenders whose lives have narrowed into a single room and a set of rules that leave no space for negotiation. 6 square meters, a toilet, a sink, a thin sleeping mat, a table, a television bolted into a fixed position. That is the entire world. At 7:30, the doors slide open, one by one, without a sound. The prisoners stand facing forward, stiff as boards, waiting for the order. Step out. When they move, they do so in unison. Military step, eyes lowered, hands fixed at their sides. The white lines painted on the floor dictate their path. No one crosses them. No one lingers. No one breaks formation. What makes it work is not fear of the guards. It's fear of the system itself. Talking is a privilege. Eye contact is a privilege. Even the ability to shift in place without permission is a privilege. Violation of any rule leads to punishments designed to crush defiance at the root. The most common one is something every inmate dreads, the sit-still punishment. A full day, 8 hours, sitting cross-legged on the cell floor without moving. No stretching, no scratching, no adjusting posture. A day where your muscles burn, your ankles throb, and your body becomes a prison inside a prison. It sounds simple. It is not. For some, the psychological impact hits harder than the physical pain. It forces a confrontation with the self that many inmates spend years trying to avoid. And yet, for all the severity, Osaka Prison is remarkably calm. There has not been a recorded riot in Japan in a century. The system is rigid, but it is predictable, cruel in its precision, but exact in its expectations. There are no surprises, no chaotic outbreaks, no armed struggles. Everything is controlled down to the millimeter. As the prisoners march toward their workshops, most go to the wood factory where they will spend their days crafting furniture. One truth becomes clear. This is not a place built to rehabilitate. It is a place built to contain, discipline, and re-engineer human behavior through absolute structure. Some will survive it, some will break, and some, like the lifer named Hiroto, will slowly dissolve into routine until the man they were disappears entirely. In Osaka Prison, time does not pass. It accumulates. Inside the workshop block, rows of men in beige uniforms move in near-perfect synchronization. The air smells like sawdust, machine oil, and the faint chemical sting of glue. It's a strange contrast, wooden furniture being crafted by men who haven't touched a warm piece of home in years. The benches, drawers, and cabinets they build will be shipped across Japan. Many will end up in houses whose owners never realize they're living with objects shaped by prisoners who were never allowed to shape their own lives. The workshop is quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in the strictest sense. No casual conversations. No whispered jokes. Talking requires a request. A request requires approval. And approval is rarely given. The guards walk the aisles without weapons, without raised voices, without tension in their shoulders. Their authority isn't in their presence. It's in the structure surrounding them. They don't need to threaten anything. The rules do the threatening for them. Every inmate moves like a shadow. Smooth, careful, unobtrusive. Among them is a man named Endo. Mid-40s. Serious face. Eyes that look like they've memorized every rule so deeply they now live behind them. He works the sanding station, his hands steady, movements controlled. He's been here long enough that the silence fits him like a second skin. He's not a lifer, but he's close. 20-something years left. Long enough that the outside world is more concept than memory. Next to him works Hiroto, the lifer from cell block 6. Hiroto is quiet even by Osaka Prison standards. Short hair, lean frame, a stare that has no urgency behind it. If a man loses enough years, urgency evaporates. Time stops being a resource. It becomes a background condition, like humidity or gravity. Hiroto killed 2 people in a botched robbery decades ago. He doesn't deny it, doesn't talk about it, doesn't defend it. He carries it the way he carries his uniform, tightly, resignedly, without adjustment. The guard consider him model compliant, not reformed, just predictable. It's the predictability that keeps this place running. At 9 a.m., a rhythmic whistle cuts through the workshop. Every prisoner freezes, not because they're startled, but because freezing is part of the choreography. Tools down, hands by their sides, eyes forward. A guard steps in front of the room. Break. The men move toward their designated seats. 2 minutes. No talking. No stretching beyond what's allowed. Even rest is regulated. This is the part that shocks outsiders. In Osaka Prison, even the idea of free time doesn't exist. Every category of the day is structured, labeled, surveilled. 2 minutes pass. Resume. Tools in hand. Sandpaper scratching. Saw blades humming. The world returns to its strict rhythm. For some, this structure offers something resembling comfort. For others, it's suffocation with a pulse. Hiroto works mechanically, sanding the corners of a wooden cabinet. His fingers move automatically, as if his body and mind have split into separate roles. One does the labor, the other watches from a distance. Over the years, he has faded into the rules like ink sinking into paper. But not everyone disappears so quietly. At the far end of the workshop, a younger inmate named Sato struggles to keep his shoulders still. He's only 22, serving 5 years for assault. Too much energy, too much impulsiveness. The rules feel like a cage wrapped around his skull. He keeps glancing up from his station, tiny, almost imperceptible movements. But in this place, imperceptible is still unacceptable. A guard notices. They always notice. Station 4. Standby. Everyone freezes again. Sato stiffens. The guard approaches with a face that holds no irritation, no emotional charge, just procedure. You broke posture. Explanation. Sato hesitates. That's mistake number 2. Permission to speak? The guard prompts. Sato nods quickly. Permission to speak. Granted. I was adjusting my shoulder. It was cramped. There's no anger. No shouting. No theatrics. Just consequences. Violation recorded. Return. Sato lowers his gaze, returns to work, and the workshop resumes like nothing happened. But he knows what's coming. Later today, a written report. Likely a disciplinary action. Maybe a day of sit-still punishment. In Osaka Prison, pain is never loud. It's methodical. By noon, the men march back to their cells for lunch. The marching is the same every day, single file, identical steps, silent as ghosts. The hallways echo with nothing but the uniform sound of feet meeting floor in perfect rhythm. Lunch is rice, pickled vegetables, miso soup, and a protein that changes daily. The meal isn't bad. It isn't good. It's fuel, precise in calories, portioned by age group to maintain standardized health ratings. Everything here is a calculation. Back in cell block 6, when the steel door slides open, Hiroto steps inside his 6-square-meter universe. A tray, a ritual, a life in fragments. He eats without rush, without expression, without thought. The guard patrol the hallway, checking each cell's inspection window every few minutes. They don't expect trouble. Not here, not in this block. The most dangerous men are often the quietest. When someone has accepted that the world has ended for them, rebellion loses its meaning. But acceptance is not the same as peace. After lunch, the men return to their workshops. The afternoon is a mirror of the morning. Same steps, same silence, same lines on the floor. But today something shifts. Midway through the afternoon session, Hiroto pauses, not visibly, not enough to break any rule, but internally. Something in the wood he's sanding triggers a memory, a kitchen table from his childhood, the way sunlight hit it in the mornings, the way the grain ran in thin, imperfect waves. He clamps down on the thought immediately. Memory is dangerous here. It pulls you toward a life you can't access anymore. Most lifers train themselves to avoid it. But today it slips through. He feels something unexpected, not sadness, something closer to disorientation, like the past suddenly rotated 20 degrees and he saw it from a new angle he didn't ask for. He stops breathing for half a second. Just half. A guard 15 meters away notices the micro-freeze. Hiroto, continue. He continues. He doesn't look up. He doesn't break formation. But the moment rattles him. Routine doesn't allow for flashbacks. Structure doesn't allow for internal disruption. Stability here depends on prisoners becoming predictable. And that half-second moment, that was unpredictable. For the first time in years, Hiroto feels the presence of his former self flicker beneath the surface. A shadow beneath a shadow. The day ends with evening inspection. The prisoners stand in lines, facing forward. The guards read the tally. No riots, no weapons, no incidents beyond posture violations. But one prisoner, Hiroto, goes to bed with a crack in his routine. And in a place like Osaka Prison, a crack is never just a crack. Before the sun lifts behind the gray skyline of Osaka, the prison is already awake. Not with noise. Noise has no place here, but with movement. Controlled, synchronized, repeatable movement. Discipline at Osaka Prison doesn't begin with the inmates. It begins with the guards. The guards mourning, silence before authority. At 5:15 a.m., inside a private training hall away from the cell blocks, a line of correctional officers stands at attention. No weapons, no batons, no pepper spray. Their belts carry nothing but keys, notebooks, and the authority of a system that believes discipline starts with the self, not with force. A senior instructor walks to the front. Begin. No speech about values. No pep talks. Just the command. They start with posture drills, because posture is the first language of control here. Back straight. Chin level. Shoulders square. Breathing steady. Every officer must embody stillness before they enforce it. Then come the marching patterns. Sharp. Rhythmic. Quiet. Their boots strike the wooden floor in perfect unison. A sound that the inmates will never actually hear, but will feel the consequences of. Japanese corrections rely on an old idea. Authority doesn't need to be loud to be absolute. It needs to be consistent. For 40 minutes, the guards rehearse the same movements they require from inmates. They practice turning precisely 90 degrees. They practice the cadence of commands. They practice the non-reaction face, a neutral mask that never shows anger, frustration, or sympathy. By the end of it, they're sweating, but not one of them looks fatigued. Fatigue is an internal matter. Outwardly, they look identical. This is the foundation of the day. The prisoner's first sound of the day. At 6:10 a.m., the lights in cell block 6 snap on with clinical brightness. No alarm tone, no shouted commands. Just light, total, unavoidable light. Every prisoner must immediately sit upright on their bedding. Legs crossed, hands placed flat on their thighs. Eyes forward. No stretching. No rubbing their face. No lingering in that half-sleep moment between dream and reality. A guard walks the corridor at the exact same speed he always does. His footsteps are soft, almost padded, but the rhythm tells everyone exactly where he is. Hajime. Begin. The men stand. They fold their bedding the same exact way they've done it thousands of times. Corners aligned. Thickness measured. The mat rolled tightly enough to satisfy inspection later. Inside his small cell, Hiroto moves automatically. Something about the woodshop memory from yesterday sits in the back of his mind, but the morning routine washes over it like cold water. Routine demands obedience. Thought is optional. Across the block, a younger inmate misfolds his bedding by half a centimeter. He knows the moment he completes the fold, it's wrong. And once he knows it, he must correct it immediately. Hesitation is its own violation. This is the shock rule in practice. The environment is so strict, the smallest deviation feels like an alarm going off in your bones. Roll call, the stillness drill. At 6:30, every prisoner stands facing the hallway, feet perfectly aligned inside the yellow floor markers. These markers are everywhere in Osaka Prison. Silent reminders that even standing requires instructions. Roll call here isn't spoken, not in the Western sense. There's no present or yes, sir. A guard reads names. Inmates bow slightly. That bow is the acknowledgement. It's a microtransaction of obedience, repeated every single day. Hiroto's bow is flawless. He's done it for decades. Sato, the younger inmate from the workshop, bows a fraction too quickly. It's noticeable only in the most technical sense, but technicalities run this place. Station 14. Correct posture. A reminder, not a punishment, but reminders accumulate. Hiroto glances sideways, not with his head, but with the smallest flick of his eyes. He remembers being that age and feeling resistance at every correction. Now, resistance is a distant concept to him. The march to breakfast, order in motion. Once roll call is complete, the command comes. Forward. The lines begin to move. Silent. Perfectly spaced. Arms at their sides. Eyes straight. Every footfall hits the ground at the same moment. Hundreds of men moving like a single organism. This march isn't about efficiency. It's about conditioning. When you control a person's movements down to the rhythm of their steps, you don't need bars thicker than steel. Breakfast is simple. Rice, miso soup, steamed vegetables. Nutritional, calculated, stripped of pleasure. The room itself is silent. The only sound is the clink of spoons against bowls. Eating fast is seen as poor discipline. Eating slow is seen as poor discipline. There's an accepted pace, and everyone knows it instinctively. Hiroto eats steadily. Sato eats slightly too fast, trying to burn off the nerves from yesterday's reprimand. A guard notes it in his booklet. Nothing dramatic will happen, but the system remembers everything. Guards' second training, the zero-weapon policy. While the prisoners return to their cells for morning inspections, the guards head into another training session, this one harsher. Because Osaka Prison is one of the few high-security facilities in the world where guards carry no lethal weapons at all. The logic is simple. No weapons means nothing can be stolen, nothing can escalate, nothing can turn into a riot. Japan has had near-zero prison riots for decades largely because of this philosophy. To uphold that system, guards must be capable of neutralizing conflict through discipline alone. Inside the training hall, they practice restraint maneuvers, non-escalation stance, synchronized intervention drills, communication protocols, posture dominance. A guard stands face-to-face with a trainee pretending to be an inmate. The trainee shouts. The guard doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, doesn't raise a hand. Control, in this place, is an atmospheric pressure, not threat. The return to work. At 8 a.m., the prisoners form lines again. They march. They disperse to workshops. Every building is entered in silence. Every task begins at the exact same moment each day. This is the rhythm Hiroto has known longer than half his life. But today, something feels slightly out of sequence to him. Not in the external routine. The guards haven't changed anything, but inside himself. That flicker from the woodshop hasn't fully died out. He suppresses it, not out of fear, but out of conditioning. Thoughts are unregulated territory, and unregulated territory is dangerous. Even the guards sense that something in him is off. Not wrong, not rebellious, just shifted. They can't pinpoint it. They don't need to. Their job isn't to interpret. Their job is to observe. And they observe everything. A system held together by stillness. By midday, the morning phase is complete. The prisoners have marched, stood, bowed, eaten, folded, and aligned. The guards have trained, monitored, recorded, and corrected. Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing loud. Nothing chaotic. And yet every minute of the morning exists to remind the men. Your body is not your own here. Your rhythm is not your own. Your decisions are replaced by the system's decisions. It's not cruelty. It's not compassion. It's control, precise, mathematical, unbreaking. And in that control, cracks don't appear suddenly. They appear quietly. Inside one man, one memory, 1/2 second freeze in the middle of the routine. The system hasn't noticed the crack yet, but it will. Cell Block 6 is the quietest place in Osaka Prison. Not because it's peaceful, but because silence here is the final currency. The men in this block have learned, through punishment or through time, that sound is a luxury they no longer own. This block houses the long-timers, the lifers, the men whose futures have shrunk to the size of their cells. Here, every movement is measured, every breath accounted for. Life functions inside a metal frame, and the walls record everything. The cell, a perfectly controlled environment. Each cell is 6 square meters, about the size of a small bathroom. Tatami mat, low wooden desk, a folded futon, a toilet in the corner separated by a half partition that offers no real privacy. The space isn't designed for comfort. It's designed for compliance. Hiroto's cell looks identical to every other one on the block. Nothing personal, no photos, no keepsakes, nothing that would remind him of life before the walls. Personal items are allowed, technically, but most men stop wanting them after enough years. They become small portals that open into a world they can't reach. Hiroto kneels on his tatami mat, hands on thighs, posture perfect. His body knows this position the way it knows how to breathe. It's the default, the expected. The rule is simple. Sit still, face forward, wait. Stillness here isn't passive. It's an imposed discipline, a held position, a refusal to shift even when your spine aches or your legs throb. The guards watch through the inspection windows. If they catch a man fidgeting, shifting weight, rubbing an eye, anything, they record it. Enough small violations, and the prisoner receives a stillness punishment session, a longer, harder version of what they already endure daily. Inmates call it the freeze. The freeze, punishment through immobility. When a man is assigned a freeze session, he sits for hours in absolute silence and stillness. He must keep his back straight, legs folded, eyes fixed on a designated spot on the wall in front of him. No bathroom breaks, no stretching, no adjusting position. If he breaks form, the clock restarts. It's not violent. It's not loud. It's control weaponized through the body's limits. Sato, the restless younger inmate from the workshop, endured a freeze session 2 weeks ago after accumulating too many posture violations. He hasn't spoken about it, not because he can't, but because the experience pressed the fight out of him in ways words can't express. Inside Block 6, every man remembers his freeze sessions. It's the kind of memory that lingers in the bones. The silence, order enforced through absence. Silence in cell block 6 isn't just a rule, it's the atmosphere. The air feels thick with it, as if sound itself has been scraped out of the hallways. Occasionally, the metal doors clank when guards pass. Occasionally, the building creaks under changing temperatures. But human voices? Rare. Talking is allowed only under strict circumstances. When receiving instructions, when asking permission, when responding to a command. Anything else violates the system. To survive here, men learn to think silently, to exist silently, to let their emotions sink deep enough that they don't ripple to the surface. The quiet becomes internal. Hiroto has mastered the silence. But today, there's a faint tension behind his calm. That half-second flashback in the workshop has not evaporated. It lingers, a thin thread pulling him somewhere his mind isn't supposed to go. He notices it, and he doesn't like it. Afternoon inspection, never unobserved. At 1:30 p.m., a bell chimes once. The men rise instantly. This part is ritual. A guard walks the hallway, stopping at each cell's inspection window. He checks posture, checks bedding, checks the placement of every item, bowl, cup, folded clothing. He arrives at Hiroto's cell. Hiroto holds the posture perfectly, kneeling, spine tall, eyes forward. But the guard senses something subtle. Not disobedience, not defiance, a drift, a preoccupation. The guard writes a small note in his booklet. Not a punishment, just an observation. Here, observation always comes first. The walk time. Freedom, Indiana straight lines. Once inspection is complete, the block is led out to the narrow courtyard for their daily walk. Calling a yard would be generous. It's a confined rectangle surrounded by high walls and steel grating. There's a small patch of sky overhead, but it feels more decorative than liberating. The men walk in single file. Same pace, same step count, same direction. Turning around is forbidden. Stopping is forbidden. Talking is forbidden. The walk is less exercise and more time per session. Some inmates use the walk to stretch their legs. Some use it to reset their breathing. Hiroto uses it to shut down whatever thoughts threaten to surface. But today, the memory of the wood grain from yesterday creeps back, the table from his childhood, the sunlight, the warmth. None of it belongs inside these walls. He clenches his jaw, the tiniest sign of internal resistance. A guard notes the tension in Hiroto's posture. Barely noticeable, but here, barely noticeable is enough. The return to the box. After the walk, the men return to their cells. The door slides shut with a heavy finality. The day narrows again to 6 square meters. Inside his cell, Hiroto picks up the small cloth used for daily wiping. Every prisoner must clean his own space meticulously. Dust is a violation. Streaks on the metal frame are violations. Smudges on the desk are violations. Cleanliness is part of discipline, proof of order. But as Hiroto wipes the corner of his desk, his hand hesitates. A single drop of memory breaks his rhythm. He sees the old wooden table again, the one he shouldn't remember. He can almost feel the texture under his fingers, the imperfections that gave it life. For a second, he stops wiping. Only a second. But the security camera sees everything. The guards visit. 10 minutes later, Hiroto hears footsteps approaching. He doesn't tense, but he knows. A guard stops at his cell door. Hiroto, report. He stands instantly, bowing. The door slides open. He follows the guard down the hallway to a small administrative room. Not a punishment cell, not an interrogation room. Just a space where guards ask questions when something looks unusual. Inside, the senior officer sits behind a desk. Hiroto, he says calmly. Your routine changed today. Not an accusation. A statement of fact. Yes, Hiroto replies quietly, requesting permission. The officer grants it with a slight nod. What is the reason? Hiroto hesitates. It's almost imperceptible, but the guards here are trained to catch the micropause. No reason, he says. The officer watches him for several seconds. He doesn't press. He doesn't raise suspicion. He simply writes something in his report. You may return. The door opens. Hiroto walks back to his cell. The guard doesn't follow immediately. He watches Hiroto's posture as he retreats, rigid, controlled, disciplined. Everything looks normal on the outside. Inside, Hiroto feels a shift. He doesn't understand it yet, but the system does. When a man starts remembering things he has spent decades suppressing, the structure feels it before he does. The night in a box. Lights dim at 9 p.m. Not off, just dim. Total darkness is forbidden. Prisoners must remain visible at all times. Hiroto lies on his futon, hands by his sides, staring at the ceiling. Most nights, his mind is blank. A survival mechanism. A learned emptiness. But tonight, something keeps breaking through. Warm sunlight across an old wooden table. The grain in the wood running in imperfect waves. His mother's voice faint in the background. A world with sound. A world with warmth. A world without rules. He shuts his eyes tightly, but the memory remains. And the walls around him, built on structure and silence, feel smaller than ever. The emotional blind spots of wanting more. People wake up wanting more, more money, more peace, more time, more opportunities, but they rarely admit the emotional chaos underneath that desire. Wanting more sounds rational. The problem is that most people want more while clinging to the same mindset that has kept them in the same place for years. The truth is uncomfortable. If wanting more doesn't challenge you emotionally, you're not actually growing. You're daydreaming. People avoid this because real transformation feels like loss at first. You lose comfort. You lose certainty. You lose parts of your identity that no longer fit the direction you claim you want to go. Most people don't want more. They want permission to stay the same while receiving more. But life never co-signs that. Growth demands emotional friction, doubt, confusion, discomfort, letting go of who you were, saying no to what feels familiar, breaking loyalty to habits that slow you down. These are the prices hidden behind the idea of wanting more. You can't elevate while protecting every emotional safety net. You can't ascend while refusing exposure. You can't expand while fearing temporary instability. The higher version of you doesn't negotiate through emotions. It moves through them. This chapter is the mirror most people avoid. The emotional cost of wanting more is unavoidable, but it's also the reason you'll become someone who can sustain the more you're asking for. Because money doesn't change emotional weakness. Success exposes it. Abundance amplifies it. If someone can't manage themselves in scarcity, they will drown in abundance. The goal isn't to get more. The goal is to become someone who can hold more. If you've made it this far, the pattern should be obvious. The biggest barriers to wealth and transformation aren't external, they're internal. People obsess over strategy, timing, luck, and opportunity, but they ignore the deeper truth. Your life expands only to the level of the mindset you're willing to confront. Not admire, not talk about. Confront. Money, progress, and growth aren't waiting for you to become perfect. They're waiting for you to stop hiding behind the emotional habits that keep you predictable, comfortable, and stagnant. Success is not complicated. It's uncomfortable. And most people avoid discomfort so hard they never meet the version of themselves that could change everything. If there's one thing to take away, it's this. The next level of your life isn't somewhere else. It's on the other side of the parts of yourself you keep postponing. This book wasn't written to motivate you. It was written to challenge you, to expose blind spots, remove illusions, and force clarity. If you apply even a fraction of the introspection these chapters demand, your life will not stay the same. Your breakthrough isn't a matter of resources. It's a matter of honesty. And now that you see the truth, the only question left is what you're going to do with it.